Hello, I'm Ken Robinsъn, and I am really thrilled to say a few words on the publication of my latest book, Creative Schools in Bulgaria. And I especially want to thank the publishers, RAABE Bulgaria Limited, for undertaking the translation of the book and its distribution in Bulgaria. I have been in education a long time. I really began in education in my 20s, which, as you can see, is quite a long time ago. And I've always been driven by a number of key principles. One of them is that human beings have tremendous natural talents. And secondly, that these talents need to be discovered and cultivated if they're to be of benefit to the people involved and to their communities. Education is the process by which we intend to do that, to discover and develop these talents, and also to enable people to live a life that has purpose and meaning. I'll say a word or two about this in a moment. For a variety of reasons, I think that many education systems, and I'm not talking specifically about Bulgaria, but many education systems around the world, and this may well apply, and I guess it will in some ways, fall short of some of these great benefits of education because of the way the systems are organized. A lot of our education systems were developed in the 19th century. I mean, they're based on older principles, but are, for the most part, mass systems of education came about in many countries in the 18th, 19th century, largely to meet the needs of industrialization. Well, in some ways they've been very successful, and in other ways not. But I believe they need to be changed fundamentally now if we're to help our communities and our children, our families and our businesses to meet the real challenges that we face in the 21st century. And that's what this book is about. Our children live in a digital world, a world that's more connected than ever before, that is moving more rapidly than ever before. And these technologies are transforming how we live, how we work, how we relate to each other, how we see ourselves and how we feel about ourselves. And the thing is, the technologies aren't slowing down. They're becoming even more revolutionary as time passes. I have no doubt that 30 years from now, our children will be living in a world that we can't imagine any more than our parents, or even I, when I was a parent at that time, could anticipate 30 years ago that we would be living now. So technology is one big factor. We are now the largest population of people on Earth. In the history of humanity, we are 7.5 billion people. That's an enormously large community of human beings, larger than at any time in human history. And we're heading for 9 billion by the end of the century. And all of these together are creating great strains, not only on relationships between human communities, but in our relationships with the Earth itself. So education has a big job to do. And the book is about what that job is and how we might set about it, I think, more purposefully and more productively. Education has several purposes. And I want to say a couple of words about each of them and why I hope the book is important in helping us think about meeting them. But I start from a particular premise in the book. And it's this, that human beings don't live in one world, we live in two. This is true of you, it's true of the people you teach, it's true of your own children if you have them, it's true of every human being on the planet. There is a world that existed before you came into it. It's a world of other people. It's a world of material objects. It's a world of historical events, of culture. It's a world of physical space and physical materiality. It's the world that exists whether or not you exist. It's the world that was there before you came and it'll be there when you've gone. So part of the role of education is to help people understand the world around them, how we have made sense of it and what we know about it and how it works. But there's another world that exists only because you exist. It's the world that came into being when you did, the world of your own private consciousness, the world that exists only because you exist, the world of your own sensibilities, your thoughts, your feelings, your ambitions, your interior world, the world in which, as R.D. Laing once said, there is only one set of footprints. Education has to help people understand that world too, because it's only in the relationships between these two worlds that we exist at all and make our way. The impact we have in the world around us has everything to do with how much we understand about the world within us and how well we're connected to our own talents and how we can control our own feelings, understand how they work, and also how we can marshal our own thoughts and connect to the people around us and the world that we share together. So one of the roles of education, as I see it, if you summarize it, is to help people to understand the world around them and the talents within them so they can live purposeful and fulfilled lives and become productive citizens. That's the baseline for me in the book. Now, there are 4 big roles of education which flow from this. I don't want to talk in detail because I hope you're going to read the book, so I don't have to take up a lot of time on this, but I just want to headline these things. One of the roles of education is economic. We expect that having been educated and during the course of being educated, that young people will be in a better position to take an active role in the economy, to become employed, to make a living, and to become financially independent. But the question is, what type of education do people need to do that these days, given how quickly the world of work is changing? Many of the technological changes we've seen already have transformed the nature of work, just as the Industrial Revolution transformed life from the agrarian economy to the urban economy. But in the next 10, 20, 30 years, we'll see an even bigger revolution with the introduction and widespread adoption of artificial intelligence, of robotics, and also the extreme miniaturization of computer systems, all of which will have consequences which are as unpredictable as they have been in the past generation. So what skills do people need to be productive in these new economic circumstances? That's one big theme of the book. A second role of education is cultural. We live in communities. Communities come to share common values, common beliefs, common ways of thinking, common ways of believing, common ways of being together. Well, there was a time when human communities were widely distributed and largely isolated from each other, and they could develop very close-knit ways of being which were unaffected relatively by outside circumstances, except perhaps if they were invaded, as has often been the case in Europe. But these days, we're all connected. We're all constantly aware of other communities, other values, and many of the great challenges that we face on Earth as human beings are cultural in character. They arise from conflicts of belief, conflicts in values. So one role of education is to help people understand their own cultural identities and how they've been shaped and formed, but also to understand those of other cultural communities with their own histories and how we've all affected each other and how we can continue to coexist with each other. A third role of education is social. All of our communities have social systems of government, of administration, of citizenship, and one of the roles of education is to help our children understand what those systems are so they can become productively involved in them, and of course, in democratic countries, to be able to challenge them and to question them and to help to evolve them into ways that may be more productive and more salient for the lives that people want to lead. But encouraging productive and active citizenship is another role of education. But the fourth role, and it's essential to all of them, and I put it finally, not because it's the last one, but because it's fundamental to all of them, is personal. Education is, above all, a personal process. It's about human beings living real lives in real situations. It's about your children. It's as much personal to them as your education was to you. And if we forget that education is about human beings and the life of humanity, then we get into trouble. So these four roles, the economic, the social, the cultural, and personal, are themes that run throughout creative schools. And there's another theme here too, which is that educating human beings is not like manufacturing material products or producing gadgets or mechanisms. Because it's a human process, we have to understand the conditions under which human beings thrive and flourish. And I believe, for a variety of reasons, many of our current education systems do not create the best conditions for people to thrive in. For example, there's been a big emphasis in recent years on testing, grading and league tables. Well, there is some value in testing and producing relevant data, but in the last 10 years especially, the pressure on countries around the world to give students more and more tests, to increase more and more competition, is proving in many ways to be counterproductive. I think of education less as a mechanical process and more as an organic one. It's, as I've said in the book, education is much more like gardening than it is like engineering. Great gardeners know that living organisms thrive in certain conditions, and if the conditions are right, then life flourishes. If the conditions are wrong, then life starts to wilt. And particularly in our major cities, particularly in the highly pressurized times that we live in, the pressure on young people from social media, for example, some of which is very good, but some of which is not so good, the pressure from popular culture means that our children are living in times where they're often now becoming much more stressed than previous generations, and education should be helping with that and not hampering it. So the subtitle of the book is Creative Schools Revolutionizing Education from the Ground Up. And the reason for that is that education is essentially a human, living, organic process that has to have its roots in the lives that people really lead. And getting those conditions right, I think, is the key to our success in the future. So I'm delighted to know that Creative Schools is now going to be available in Bulgaria. I know you have a big conversation happening in Bulgaria about education, about the future of education, about how best to cultivate the talents, the interests and the ambitions of all of your young people, and how crucial that is in their lives, in the lives of your communities, and in the lives and future of Bulgarians as a whole. I've written the book as a contribution to this really essential debate about the future of education in all parts of the world. I hope it proves to be valuable, informative, and useful in the conversations happening in Bulgaria. Again, I want to offer my thanks to the publisher for making the book available, and my great good wishes to you in all you're trying to do to improve education, as we all must, for all of our children, for all of our futures. Thank you very much, and please enjoy Creative Schools.